The rain was pounding against the windows the morning the package arrived. Not normal rain either. The kind that turns the whole sky gray and makes the world feel smaller, heavier. I remember standing in my kitchen, staring at the box sitting on the counter, my coffee going cold in my hand, because printed across the top, in my father's handwriting, were 4 words: open on your birthday. The problem? My father had been dead for 10 years, and what was inside that box would completely destroy the people who spent a decade pretending they loved him. If you've ever wondered whether karma really exists, this story might convince you. And if you love stories about revenge, betrayal, and long overdue justice, hit that like button, subscribe, and settle in. Because this one gets brutal. My dad died when I was 19. Cancer. Fast. The kind that doesn't just kill a person. It erases them piece by piece while everyone watches helplessly. 1 month he was fixing the fence in our backyard. The next he couldn't climb the stairs without stopping halfway to breathe. And through all of it, my stepmother Diane acted like the grieving widow of the century, crying at the hospital, holding his hand, posting long emotional paragraphs online about the love of her life. People adored her for it, but I saw things no one else noticed. The impatience in her face when he needed help standing up. The irritation when he forgot things because of the medication. The way she'd leave the room every time doctors discussed finances. And after he died, everything changed almost overnight. Dad's funeral hadn't even been over for a full week before Diane started reorganizing the house. That's what she called it, reorganizing. In reality, she was erasing him. His old records, gone. His clothes, donated. His workshop in the garage, locked. I remember standing there watching strangers carry boxes of my father's life into a donation truck while Diane stood in the driveway sipping coffee like she was supervising a yard sale. I was still grieving so hard my chest physically hurt, and then she hit me with the sentence I'll never forget. "You're 19 now," she said casually. "Your father would have wanted you to be independent." Independent. Translation? Get out. I asked her what she meant. She crossed her arms and sighed dramatically like I was inconveniencing her. "This house is legally mine now." I felt my stomach drop. My dad had always promised the house would eventually be shared between us. He told me that since I was a kid. But apparently sometime during his treatments, Diane convinced him to rewrite everything. Or maybe manipulated him into it. I'll never know. What I do know is that 2 weeks after burying my father, I was sleeping on my friend Marcus's couch with 2 trash bags full of clothes. And Diane? She sold my dad's vintage Mustang less than a month later. That car was his pride and joy. We rebuilt the engine together when I was 16. I still remember the smell of motor oil on his hands, the way he'd grin every time the engine roared to life. She sold it like it was nothing. I hated her for that. But hatred doesn't pay bills. So I buried everything and focused on survival. I worked warehouse shifts during the day and cleaned office buildings at night. Sometimes I slept 4 hours total. Meanwhile, Diane posted vacation photos online from Cabo. New jewelry, new kitchen remodel, inspirational quotes about healing after loss. Every time I saw her face, it felt like acid in my throat. But eventually, life moved on, at least on the surface. Years passed. I built a career in logistics. Nothing glamorous, but stable. I got my own apartment, started dating again, learned how to function without carrying grief in every breath. And then came my 29th birthday, 10 years after Dad died. That morning, there was a knock at my apartment door. A delivery driver handed me a medium-sized sealed package. No return address, just my name and my father's handwriting. My knees nearly gave out right there in the hallway. I carried the box inside like it was explosive. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it opening the tape. Inside were 3 things: a VHS tape, a stack of documents, and a letter. The letter was sealed in an envelope labeled, "For Daniel, only if Diane betrays you." I couldn't breathe. I sat down slowly and opened it. The paper smelled old, dusty, like it had been sitting untouched for years. And then I read the first line. "Son, if you're reading this, then I was right about her. I swear my heart stopped. My father explained everything. During his cancer treatments, he started suspecting Diane was pressuring him about money. Apparently, she became obsessed with the inheritance once doctors confirmed he didn't have much time left. He wrote that he caught her secretly meeting with a lawyer twice, that she pushed him constantly to update his will while heavily medicated. And here's where it gets insane. My father never fully trusted the revised will, so before signing anything, he met privately with his own attorney. And together, they created a backup plan. My father transferred a separate investment account into a protected trust under my name. Not millions, but enough. Enough to completely change my life. Then came the real bombshell, the VHS tape. Dad wrote, "If Diane removed you from the house after my death, give this tape to the attorney listed below." My pulse was hammering so hard I could hear it. I dug out an old VHS player from storage that same afternoon. The footage crackled to life. There was my father, thinner than I remembered, pale, exhausted, but looking directly into the camera. "Today is August 14th, he said weakly. "I'm recording this because I'm not sure Diane understands that coercing a dying man is still fraud." I froze. Then the video continued. Dad explained that Diane repeatedly pressured him while he was medicated to sign legal documents. He said she threatened to leave him during treatment if he didn't secure her future. But he also revealed something else. He'd recorded conversations, audio recordings, multiple ones, and attached to the stack of documents were transcripts. I started reading, and my blood ran cold. Diane mocked him constantly behind closed doors, called him already half dead, complained that treatments were wasting inheritance money. At one point, she literally said, "Your son's useless anyway. Why should he get anything?" I had to pause the tape. I felt sick. Not angry. Not yet. Just hollow. Like the last 10 years suddenly rearranged themselves into something uglier. But then came the final part. Dad leaned toward the camera and said quietly, "Son, if she did what I think she did, don't let her keep pretending she loved me." That sentence changed everything. The next morning, I contacted the attorney Dad mentioned, an older man named Richard Hale. The second I mentioned my father's name, he went silent. Then he said something chilling. I wondered if this day would come. Apparently, Dad had legally prepared for this exact scenario. The recordings, documents, and timeline created a strong fraud case against Diane regarding the will revisions. Not enough for criminal charges after so many years, but enough to reopen civil proceedings, and enough to publicly expose her. Now here's the part that made this revenge so satisfying. Diane had built her entire identity around being the devoted widow. She ran grief support groups online, posted anniversary tributes every year. People worshipped her. So when the case reopened, everything exploded. Family members started contacting me immediately. At first they accused me of being greedy. Then the transcripts became public record. And suddenly, silence, followed by panic. I'll never forget the phone call Diane made after she realized what was happening. Her voice was shaking. "How dare you do this after all these years?" I laughed. Not because it was funny, because for the first time in a decade, she sounded afraid. "You threw me out 2 weeks after Dad died," I told her. "You sold his car. You erased him." "That's not true." "I heard the recordings, Diane." Dead silence, then breathing, sharp, uneven. And finally she whispered, "He manipulated you." That part nearly impressed me. Even cornered, she still tried twisting reality. But the truth was stronger now. The recording spread through the family faster than wildfire. Her grief group friends abandoned her. People who defended her for years suddenly stopped answering her calls. And then came the final blow. The trust my father left me had quietly grown over the decade through investments. A lot. Enough that I no longer needed to work 2 jobs. Enough that the life I struggled for all those years suddenly became stable overnight. Meanwhile, Diane was drowning in legal fees trying to salvage her reputation. And then I got one last message from her. Just 3 sentences. "Your father loved me. You destroyed my life. I hope you're happy." I stared at that text for a long time. Because honestly, I expected triumph, vindication, some dramatic emotional release. But what I actually felt was peace. For 10 years, I carried this quiet belief that my father had abandoned me at the end, that maybe I wasn't worth protecting. And that package erased all of it. He saw what was happening. He fought for me anyway, even while dying. That was the real gift. Not the money, not the revenge. The proof that I mattered to him until the very end. A week later, I visited Dad's grave for the first time in years. The cemetery was quiet except for wind moving through the trees. And for the first time since I was 19, I talked to him out loud. I told him everything. About the apartment, the jobs, the anger, the package. And before leaving, I sat there for a moment and laughed softly to myself. Because somehow, my father managed to protect me from beyond the grave. And Diane? She spent 10 years pretending she won, only to lose everything because one dying man planned ahead. Sometimes revenge isn't loud. Sometimes it arrives quietly, in a cardboard box, 10 years late, but perfectly on time. And that's the story of the gift that arrived a decade after a father's death and exposed a lifetime of lies. Do you think Diane deserved what happened to her? Or should the past have stayed buried? Tell me in the comments. And if you want more emotionally charged revenge stories just like this one, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and I'll see you in the next story.